Hi guys, my name is Tanya and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit old and maybe a little bit new, like someone else has probably done it, but to me it's new. This video is based on the Try a Chapter tag, which was originally created, I believe, just over a year ago now by Jen at Book Paradise, and I will link that video down below. I've never done the original tag and I've never been tagged to do the original tag, but I thought that I would do something with that tag for you today whilst I was here with my home bookshelf again. So I've picked out 5 books from this shelf that were all absolute favourites of mine when I was a teenager. They also happen to belong to series that I read the entirities of obsessively. I reread them all the time. They were like my ultimate happy place whenever I was having trouble or I was ill. These were the books that I would go to read again and again and again. I'm 25 now. I've lived away from home for 6 years, I think it is. So I thought it would be fun to look back at the first chapters of each of these books and to see how I react to them now, because this is the Try a Chapter tag Teen Favourites edition. The first book that I picked out was The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. And of course, the first book that I picked out doesn't actually have chapters, as it's written in diary form. I still watch the movie based on this book far too often, so I actually kind of struggled reading the first chapter of this because I have all these expectations of it based on the movie now that mean I've forgotten how this kind of goes, really. But anyway, I think that if I read this today, I probably might not even carry on reading it. It kind of is just Mia whinging and talking about algebra, and I have no idea how American algebra works. And I know that Mia doesn't understand how the algebra works either, and that's probably part of it, but what the hell is half the stuff you guys have to do? As we're talking more and more about sex positivity and everything like that, something that I did appreciate about the opening of this book is that although Mia does in a way talk about other characters as though making out with people and stuff like that is wrong, she also recognises that if it were her doing it, she wouldn't mind. And I just thought that was quite a good self-aware way to be, and that made me feel really positive about starting to read this again. So yeah, I found Mia a bit whingy. I might not read this now. I might give them a go again, I don't know. The second book that I picked out was the first in the Confessions of Georgia Nicholson, which is Angus Fong's and Full Frontal Snogging. Not perfect snogging, as the flippin' film made it out. That is wrong. It's full frontal snogging. This did get me a little close to home because we lost Louise Renison this year, and it makes me incredibly sad because these books made my teenage years. I read them with my friends and we talked about them all the time. We had our own little adventures and escapades based on having read these books. We probably wouldn't be the people that we were and wouldn't have done the things we'd done sometimes without them. Although my adult brain kind of looked up in shock at some of this because of the way that in the opening month, this book also doesn't have chapters but is divided into months, Georgia goes off on a little bit of a thing about how she's not very successful with guys and how she's afraid she's going to end up having to be a lesbian, and I was a bit like, hang on a second, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it also struck a chord with the way that I didn't realise when I was younger that women could be gay because of the way that I was brought up, and I thought that was quite interesting actually. But there are points in this that just really made me giggle still. Georgia is just relatable. She doesn't understand her family don't maybe understand her that well, or they do understand her very well and she doesn't realise it, and it just ends up being a bit of a hoot and a jolly good time, and I've missed reading these books. So I really failed at this Try a Chapter thing because once again, the third book that I picked out doesn't have chapters, and this was Feeling Sorry for Celia by Jacqueline Moriarty. This book is written entirely in emails/letters from societies to Elizabeth, our main character, notes from her mother left on the fridge, and letters between her and a girl who begins as a stranger at a neighbouring school. So it's very eclectic and very good fun, but it doesn't have any chapters. It has 12 parts to it, and it did not take much convincing for me to read the whole of part 1 as my first chapter, because as soon as I picked this book back up, I fell in love with it all over again. You can see in it that you have Celia, who's kind of like the manic pixie dream girl figure, but that actually Lizzie and her mother, they kind of look at her mum who's saying, Celia's just being Celia, she's a flower, let her blossom, and they're like, no, we need to probably do something about this. So right from the start begins taking apart this manic pixie dream girl trope, and the letters from different societies kind of really bring out the pressures that are on people when they're teenagers. But then you have these letters between Lizzie and Christina, and those are just really humanising, and you see them straight away taking to each other and beginning to get to know each other, and it's just so you want to know more about them, and I want to know more about them, and I desperately had to stop myself from just carrying on reading this and reading the whole book. The fourth book that I picked up was Marked by PC and Kristen Cast. This was the first book in the House of Night novels. I picked the first 2 books of this series up. It turned out on the day that they came out in the UK, because I'd literally just finished reading Breaking Dawn and and needed something else to read. And this had vampires in it, so at the time, you know, that was a win. The first chapter of this introduces the concept of the vampires and how they work in this world, which is that they are tracked down and marked by a vampire tracker with a little half moon mark on their forehead, and they then have to get themselves to a house of night or they will die. And even if they get to the house of night, the possibility is that they won't survive. So this was really intriguing. It also had the mix with the high school life. She had a best friend who wouldn't shut up and seemed very irritating. And at the end of the chapter, you get this introduction to Zoe, who is the main character's ancestry. She's descended from the Cherokee people on her mother's side, and that brings in the concept actually right at the end of the chapter that it's maybe a good thing that she's been marked, that it brings out something of her heritage in her. But you know basically from the start that this is going to end up being a vampires in a boarding school novel, and my teenage self revels in that. I'd probably still reread these even though I know that later on there are problems, especially with slut shaming in these books, and I kind of was trying to block that from my brain and just reread the first chapter to see what I think of this, and I think that I would still start reading this series again just from the first chapter. My final book was totally cheating because we all knew how I was going to feel about it. I just wanted an excuse to pick it up again, and that is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Even though I've read this book so many times, I forget how much I enjoy the beginning to this book and how it just sucks you in straight away with these absurd goings on in the world of the very ordinary and dull Mr. Dursley as he goes about his day, and owls begin flying all over the place and there are shooting stars across the country and people dressed in strange clothes, and he's angry about it and goes home to his wife and doesn't want to talk to her because it's to do with her sister's people, and I just can't even, like, I forget how good that beginning is. The introduction to Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore, and just J.K. Rowling's descriptions of McGonagall as a cat and how sassy she is. I just love the first chapter of this book so much. And so yeah, that was my take on the Try a Chapter tag. If you would like to give it a go in this strange teenage iteration, please do. Please let me know down below because I'm really nosy and I'd love to see what books were your favourites as a teenager. Let me know down below what your favourite books were as a teenager because I would genuinely be really interested to hear about them. I hope that you're all having a lovely day and I will see you all again very soon. Goodbye!